In this example, we're going to discuss how to create a process with required input variables and input globals. So let's go ahead and create a new process. So we're going to say create, and we're going to give a name for the workflow definition. Let's call it required was and globals. So let's go ahead and define a couple of variables and a couple of globals. So we're going to say define variables, and we're going to call, let's say, num1, and let's make it a numeric, and let's do num2 and add it as a numeric also. If you want to make these two required, what that means is when you instantiate the process or the workflow instance, the instance will need values for these two passed in, and we can make them required by selecting this particular variable and saying mark required, and you'll see a little star that goes in front of it, and we are going to make this also required variable. And let's add another one called sum, and we're going to make the sum not required. Let's go ahead and add an expression step now. So we just use a expression to add the two numbers and assign it to sum. So here let's go ahead and give variable dot num1 plus variable dot num2, and we're going to give variable dot sum. And if we go ahead and save this workflow definition, and let's go ahead and create a new instance. Let's generate a name. As you can see, the num1 and num2 are required variables. I cannot say create and execute because I need to provide values for these two. As you can see, sum is not required. It's not a required variable. So let's go ahead and give some values. So let's give 34 and 67 and say create and execute. And if we look at our workflow instances now, we should see a new instance. Now let's go into our step here and look at the variables. You will see that the values that were input for num1 and num2 were assigned, and the sum was computed based on the expression provided. It's simple as that. Now, if we want to do the same thing with globals, let's go back to our designer, and all you have to do is define a global. Let's say we call the global val x, and let's change this to a number and say add, and we can select that particular global and mark it required also. And let's go ahead and save the definition. If we go and try to create an instance, you will see that now the global val x is also required. I can go ahead and say generate a name. Let's go ahead and enter some values. And if I try to submit, it says all required fields must have values. And as soon as I enter some value as val x, I am able to go ahead and create the workflow instance. And that's about it. That's how we define required globals and variables within a workflow process.